Hello, I am back, Teacher Marvin, and I'm here again to share with you a relevant lesson, particularly about teaching approaches and methods. So, this lesson will be beneficial to education students out there and to those who are reviewing for their LET examination. Likewise, I think this is also beneficial to those who would like to review their knowledge about teaching approaches and methods. And to those who are already teaching, yeah, you could again reflect whether these approaches and methods are being applied in your classroom. And actually, I haven't uploaded any a lot of videos for quite a long time because of busyness in school matters. But since I received a lot of requests and comments in my previous videos, I'm here again to share with you um, a lesson in professional education. So, uh, in talking about approaches and methods, I think it's relevant for us to reflect on the following statement. First, teacher Brenda Mage said, "My students are bored." Teacher Jack Amu said, "It seems like my students are not interested." Teacher Abu Sadu said, "My students can hardly understand the lesson." Teacher Gina said, "My students think there's just too much to learn." These statements are actually often stated or often uttered by many teachers, and these reflect some challenges in the teaching and learning process. And all of these teachers ask, is there any way to improve learning? Well, basically, at first glance or upon looking at those statements a while ago, we it is actually clear that there really is a challenge, okay, and there really is something to be improved. And all of these teachers ask, is there any way to improve learning? So, to those who are teaching already, you could also reflect on on these things that we will be talking about. But before answering that one, I think it's also good to think, why don't we improve teaching first? Okay, because most of the time we put the blame to the students. Why are they not listening in my class? Why the students are continuously getting low scores in my class? And why are they not interested, not doing their homework, and so on and so forth? Well, as an educator, I believe that teaching and learning is actually a shared responsibility. But and so since it is a shared responsibility, you also have to ask yourself, okay, do not only put the blame or yeah, put the blame to the students. Okay, it's also good to ask yourself, how do you improve or how will you improve teaching? So our students, even I myself, I can't deny the fact that sometimes my students look like this in my class, right? Okay, so for these faces, looking at these faces, it's there's only one word that comes to my mind, and that is they're bored. Bored. Okay, and with this behavior of the students, not only that they are bored, sometimes uh, there are some misbehavior and everything, and you also have to add the admin task and academic related tasks or paperwork of teachers. Sometimes as teachers, we see ourselves in these kinds of situations. Sometimes we also see ourselves like this, or worse, like this one. Okay, so they are overwhelmed, okay, and stressed because of their job. And some teachers, when they experience these kinds of hardships, they think of giving up. They think of uh, you know resigning and looking for, they try to look for other job. but it's actually just normal to experience this one. What makes it not normal is when you always see yourself like this. So what is important here is that you have to know how to manage the challenges that you would encounter. So it's actually nice to reflect on this statement from Ignacio Estrada. If a child can't learn the way we teach, maybe we should teach the way they learn. Okay, this reflects student-centered teaching. That when we teach, we have to consider we have to consider the individual differences. We have to consider the learning styles of the students and so on and so forth. And if that is being considered in the planning and the delivery of the lesson, more likely students would learn best and they would be interested, okay, in your lesson or in your class per se. So the first approach that I'll be sharing with you is constructivism. Constructivism is reflected from the picture that you can see in the presentation. As you can see here, pupils are actually having or collaborating with one another, and they're being guided by the teacher. Okay, so that's one of the features of constructivist teaching. Now, take a look. Let's try to look at the other features of constructivist teaching. Okay, but before that, let's try to define what it is. It is based on the belief that learning occurs when learners are actively involved in the process of meaning and knowledge construction as opposed to passively receiving information. So, constructivism came from the word construct, right? So, from the word construct, meaning you make something, you build something. And since it's used in the in teaching, it means that it is the creation or it's the making of knowledge. And in the 21st century teaching and learning, it's actually focused more on the creation of knowledge. Gone are the days when we, receive all the information from the teacher. We only sit inside the classroom and then wait for the information to be poured to our mind. But, you know, those are the traditional ways of teaching. Nowadays there is a need to use constructivism. You have to engage your learners to be active so that they will be active in the meaning making process. So this is actually the uh this is actually the situation, okay, in the teaching before, and the role of the teacher in the traditional classroom is that teachers are said to be sage on the stage, meaning you are the expert on the stage and you are the only source of information in the classroom. Okay, but right now still you must be sage, but you must not only the one who knows something about the lesson. You should not only be the one uh, to be the source of information in the classroom, but you have to use your knowledge and skills in guiding the students. So you are now a guide on the side. Okay, remember this is constructivism. So you have to let your students construct knowledge through your guidance, and so the scaffolding, okay, is being used in constructivist classroom. Yeah, this reflects traditional classrooms. You can see the child here actually is not interested about what is happening because that's not real world. Okay, what is happening inside the classroom is not real world. This is real world, right? Outside the classroom. Okay, this is more interesting. And with that, this child does not find it meaningful what is happening in the classroom, because what is happening here is there's actually, yeah, the students or the pupils are being spoon fed by the teacher. Okay, In constructivist classroom, it must be like this. Like what I said, students should be collaborating with one another, and the teacher should just be a guide on the side. All right. So, um, this to learn more about the differences when it comes to the roles of the teacher. Let's try to compare the role of the teacher in the traditional classroom and in the 21st century classroom. Okay. Now, we have different beliefs of about learners, and it's written on the left. In the first column, the second column describes these beliefs, and the last column tells us about the role of the teacher. The first belief of or about the learner is learners are registers. Okay, what does it mean? They don't want to learn and are forced to. Okay, I think as students, once in your life you have felt this one, right? That you are compelled to learn something. You need to attend the class because you need to pass the subject. And so whether you like it or you don't like it, you actually are forced to learn something. And the role of the teacher there is the authority, okay, or chalk and talk. Of course, this is a traditional role of the teacher. We also have receptacles. So they are to be filled up with knowledge and within their capacities. Okay, although the capacity is considered, but take a look at this. They are to be filled up with knowledge. Is that constructivism? Definitely not. Okay, because here there is spoon feeding. Okay, the teacher is the sage on the stage. Okay, so the role of the teacher is dispenser of knowledge, the provider of knowledge, the fountain of knowledge, and that knowledge is to be poured to the mind uh, of the learners. Okay, we also have raw materials. Okay, the belief of another belief about learners, raw material, they can be shaped into valuable and fine human beings. Okay, sounds good because they could be shaped right into valuable and fine human beings. Okay, here the role of the teacher though is a stage on the stage and soloist. Why? Because if it is a raw material, it's like if you are making, if you are you know you're working in a furniture store, for example. Okay, you make tables, you make chairs, okay, cabinets, and so on. You have raw materials, but who decides? Who decides what will happen to the raw materials? Okay, the one who will do it, the one who will construct it. Okay, so the one who does it reflects the teacher. So you are, I mean, the students are raw materials, and the teachers don't want to think what the students will become. Okay, is that student centered? No. Okay, that's why it's said soloist. Okay, the teacher decides. It's teacher centered, and again, it's sage on the stage. So this is still traditional. Okay, we also have clients. Okay, the clients in the bank, right? They come specifically for knowledge. Okay, so they go inside your classroom, they get knowledge, okay, and then you're the banker. Here's the knowledge that you need. Well, sounds good actually. That means that students go inside your classroom for knowledge, and you are the banker. But take a look at what is happening in the bank. Okay, they go there, okay, deposit. They could deposit knowledge. Okay, they could also get knowledge. But you're the banker here. uh, you give knowledge. Okay, although they deposit, no, you give knowledge. That's the role of the role of the teacher there as a banker. So still, this is something traditional. Yeah, this is something traditional. But what if the belief of the learner about learner is learners are partners? Okay, peers who spend time with the teacher for mutual growth and development. And the teacher's role here is as coach or mentor. Of course, this is 21st century. This is constructivist, okay? Because you need to, as a teacher, you need to become a partner of your students in developing their knowledge, okay? They're in the developing their skills, values, attitude, and so on and so forth, okay? So it's not only the teacher who decides, but there's an agreement, okay? There is a collaboration, okay, between and among the students, or between the teacher and the students, okay? We also have individual explorers, autonomous learners who explore on their own and come to their own conclusions. All right, autonomous learners meaning independent learners. Okay, they could do it themselves you know, uh, with guidance of the teacher. They're individual explorers. Okay, and the teacher is there though to still guide them. Okay, so this is in 21st century, the role of a teacher in the 21st century, and we call our teachers as facilitators. And lastly, we have democratic explorers, a group of learners who decide together about their goals and objectives in learning. And still, the teacher's role is as a facilitator or collaborator. Now, here, um, it was mentioned that students decide for their goals and objectives in learning. This is again the reflection of student-centered teaching. Okay, and since they decide for the goals and objectives of learning, it also reflects the concept of metacognition. Okay, so it's about learning about learning. Okay, it's metacognition, and that's the kind of attitude, behavior, or learning that students of the 21st century must manifest. Okay, so with this, I think that it's clear to you now the difference between the role of the teacher in the 21st century and the role of the teacher in a traditional classroom. Okay, now let's now look at the different features of constructivist. You could now reflect whether you are a constructivist teacher or not. First, a constructivist teacher uses authentic activities and real world environment. We're not bookish if we are constructivist, okay? As much as possible, we provide them with first-hand experiences. If you're learning about computer, give them activities in which they will be using computer. If it's science, you make use of laboratory for authentic activities and the real world environment. That way, students will learn best. Do not, just stick on memorization. Gone are the days when we just draw, for example, the parts of the microscope, explain its function, but when it comes to the real application, we don't know how to use it anymore. Okay, so that is actually not effective. Okay, not effective nowadays. Um, and a constructivist classroom is also said to have, okay, our students should have multiple perspectives, okay? So different point of views must be considered in a constructivist classroom, and with these different perspectives, it actually enriches, okay, it actually enriches the teaching and learning process, okay. And if you consider multiple perspective, there's a democracy inside the classroom, okay. There's a democracy that. And next is a constructivist classroom is holistic and integrative. Holistic because um, you develop not only uh not only one single aspect. For example, you don't only develop the knowledge of your students, but you develop also their skills. Their whole being is being developed, the values, attitude, knowledge, skills, and so on and so forth. Okay, and it is also integrative because in the development of the holistic being of the students, we make use of the different concept. I mean, we make use of different um, concepts, theories, knowledge from different subjects. Okay, so when you are teaching, okay, you consider different contents from different disciplines. And if you make use of those, okay, for example, you're teaching science, but you make use of concepts in mathematics, content in TLE, in Araling Panlipunan, and so on and so forth, but still related to your objective, then you are doing an integrative teaching. But in being integrative is a feature also of constructivist. Later, we will also discuss about integrative or yeah, integrative um, teaching. All right. Well, it's also uh, self-directed. Okay, a constructivist classroom or a constructivist student is said to be self-directed. When we say self-directed, students can work from their own. You give them tasks, okay, you give instruction, and they can do it alone. Okay, that's being independent learners. Okay, you could rely on them that even for example, you give an activity or homework which will be done individually, or an output which will be done individually. They could do it, or they would do it because they are self-directed. But they're self-directed if they also have their own goals. They will see that the activity that you gave to them is something relevant to them, and they find it interesting as well, so they would do it. That's being self-directed. They monitor their own learning and they evaluate as well the output that they do. Okay, that's constructivist. But this is constructivism, sir. It may be contradictory to what you have mentioned a while ago, that it must be there must they must be working collaboratively. Yes, actually, it could also be s- um, being self-directed could also be applied in group activities, not only individual activities. That means that if you gave them a group activity and all of these, for example, students are working with one another, and all of these students have specific roles to play in the activity, and they do their job, okay, they do their part to accomplish the activity, then they're said to be self-directed learners, right? And of course, meaningful. Okay, um, constructivist uh, teaching is also uh, meaningful learning. Uh, it is worth asking then, what is meaningful learning? When does learning become meaningful? It becomes meaningful, okay, when the things that the students learn are based or are related to the real life experiences, okay, and if they could use their learning in their day-to-day living, okay. So if it is related to their lives, the learning becomes meaningful. That's why we have mentioned a while ago that authentic activities and real world activities should be given to students, because it reflects that the learning therefore is meaningful. Okay, now with that, let's try to measure your understanding on this. Okay, uh, determine whether the following statements are applications of a constructivist classroom or not. The teacher is not open to negotiation with students regarding the scope of the subject. What do you think is the answer? Not open to negotiation. All right. So the teacher is the authority. Okay, here the students are forced to learn, are forced to follow. Okay, Eh, the answer here is not a constructivist classroom. Okay, learners are immersed in experiences within which may engage in meaningful inquiry, action, imagination, invention, interaction, hypothesizing, and personal reflection. Obviously, okay, this is a constructivist classroom. Next, there's so much teaching to the test. Okay, first, it may sound good actually, right? Teaching to the test. Of course, you teach so your students will pass. But if you only teach for the test, okay, they cannot take a look at the word so. There's so much teaching to the test. Your lesson will not be meaningful, and the students would forget the things that you have taught, especially if the exam is done. If they pass the examination, what the knowledge for? But then, how and when will the students apply that what they have learned? Okay, so do not teach not only for the students to pass a test. Next, there is a feeling that there exists a barrier between the students and teacher. Okay, so a while ago we studied about the role of the teacher and belief about learners, and one is partners, right? So here, if there's a barrier between the students and teacher, it is not constructivist. Okay, there must still be a gap between the teacher and students, but if it is a barrier, it is not helpful. Okay, um, st- assess assessing is primarily done to help students learn. Okay, this is actually a constructivist teaching. Okay, we use assessment to teach the students, so students will still learn. Okay, we don't use assessment. This is a violation of assessment. We don't use assessment to to punish the students. We don't use assessment to weed out poor students, but it is primarily done to help students learn. And teaching involves negotiating. Obviously, we have mentioned this a while ago. So this is constructivist. Power sharing is felt by students, yes, because there must be democracy inside your classroom, and it is highly interactive. Well, obviously, this is also constructivist. All right. So I think it's clear now to all of you what a constructivist classroom is, or what is constructivism. Okay. Now let's move to the next approach, which is interactive teaching. So what is interactive teaching? From the word itself, the word interactive reminds us of people whom the learner interacts with in order to learn. So to whom do students really interact with inside the classroom? What kinds of interaction are are happening inside the classroom? We actually have three. We have student to teacher interaction, student, yeah, teacher student or student teachers interaction. We also have student to student interaction, and the last one is student to into instructional material interaction. Okay, so those are the three interactions inside the classroom. Why do we promote interactive learning in the first place? Well, because learning is said to be an active process. Okay, meaning the students would really need to interact with other people, because in real life, well, we have, well, cliche as it may sound, but no one is an island. Okay, soon your students will graduate. When they work, they will need to interact with other people for them to grow and for them to function well in the job that they have chosen. Okay, so it is an active process, and it's also a social process. Learning is a social process. Okay, and therefore you have to make use of the different strategies so students can interact with one another, may it be by pair, may it be by group, and so on. So every student can serve as a resource speaker. This is a good feature of an interactive classroom, or interactive approach in teaching, because uh, the source of information will not just be the teacher. Okay, but you give opportunities for the students to also be a resource speaker. Nowadays, we don't see our students as empty vessels, right? They know something with the advent of technology. Students do not get inside our classroom empty knowledge, right? But they know something. Okay, if it's most especially if your lesson is about technology, okay, or something related to that, or anything that interests them, because right now, if they're curious and are interested to learn something, it's just a click away. Okay, they could watch it and they could learn it through YouTube, through Google, and so on and so forth, different websites. Okay, so if you think that your student is knowledgeable on a particular lesson, you could ask the student to be a resource speaker. Okay, and mhm. Now let's take a look at this one. Teacher's task in interactive learning. So what's the teacher's task then? Ask specific, non-intimidating feedback, questions, and hot questions. First, specific question. Why? Why is there a need to ask specific questions? Mostly teachers would ask at the end of the lesson. Teachers would ask, uh, did you understand class? Do you have any question? But mostly, our our the answer of the student is none, none, ma'am, none, sir. Did you understand? Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. But is it really a true answer? I mean, is that really true? Students would just say yes, no question, but they didn't understand your lesson because you asked a general question. So ask instead a specific question because a specific question uh, requires specific answer. So we studied about matter. Okay, what is again a matter? Okay, what are the different types of matter that we study? Okay, and those questions would now require specific answers. Okay, and it must be non-intimidating because if it is intimidating, the feedback is intimidating, the students or pupils will not recite anymore. Okay, or even the way you ask questions. Okay, if it is intimidating, they won't recite even they know the answer, and you have to answer. Um, ask also hot questions, or we say higher order thinking skills questions. Those questions that would require them to analyze, that would require them uh, uh, to create, evaluate, okay, and so on. Make the focus of interaction clear. Okay, so you give a task group activity, for example, and of course they would make uh, they would collaborate, right? They would interact. So you have to uh, you have to emphasize that students would need to interact with one another so they could accomplish a certain task. Okay, later I'll expound about this. So create the climate favorable for genuine interaction. Okay, there must be no gap between and among the students, between you and the students themselves. There must be no bullying. Okay, and there must be no judgment. Okay, everybody should feel that they have something to share in the class. They have something necessary in the accomplishment of the task that you have given to them. Okay, so that's a climate favorable for genuine interaction. There's acceptance and respect to one another. And lastly, do less talk to students so students talk more. Okay, you remember you're a facilitator, you are a guide on the side. So less talk may do. You give them interaction, and I mean you give them task, and then after that you facilitate the class. Okay, that's the role of the teacher in interactive teaching and learning. Okay, and an interactive class. Okay, an interactive class paves a way to collaboration. Okay, so interactive it becomes interactive when students start to collaborate. Okay, uh, start to collaborate. If the students start to I mean no no it's when it's interaction when the students start to talk and share information from one another, but it becomes collaboration if uh, the interaction becomes continuous, and the interaction uh, I mean it becomes collaboration if they work already with one another to accomplish a certain task. Okay, and to know more about this, when students collaborate, they don't just interact, they work together. Take note of this, because they could just, in a group activity for example, they could just interact. Okay, this is my share, this is what I know about the topic, and then that's it. I've done my part. Okay, you do your part. Okay, I've done my part. Okay, it's up to the leader. How's it going? How will he how will we work on that? Okay, but when you share your part, but you still collaborate, you still, work together so you could accomplish the task better. That is collaboration. Okay, so we could give them diets, by twos. When we say diets, we could pair them. Think pair share, for example. Triads, it could be by three. Okay, triads. We could also give them tetrads. Okay, yeah, tetrads by four. Okay, or small group. Okay, less than eight. Yeah, eight below. Okay, 5 to 8 groups. Okay, that's small group, and it is important that when we give small group activities, you have to give specific tasks to each member, because the tendency is when you give small group discussion, for example, the leader will just be the one to work. So, to ensure that everyone has a work or has something to share, you give them specific tasks. For example, one is secretary, one is I am expert, one is the discussant, or the one is the presenter, okay? One is the researcher, okay? Depending on the task that you give, okay? So remember that coming together is the beginning, keeping together is progress, and working together is success. And that should be done, okay, inside your classroom to ensure successful teaching and learning. That's according to Henry Ford. What's then the task of teachers in interactive collaborative learning? Teacher must begin with the conviction that every student can share something. Do not underestimate your students. You give them task group activities because um, there's something that they could share, and that must be felt by the students. And how will the student feel that one? Through your trust that you give to them. Okay, structure task in such a way that small group goal can not be realized without the members. That's why I said you give specific task. Okay, and each task of each member must be relevant, that the completion of the task will not happen without the other one working for his or her part. And then make the goal clear to all, because then if you communicate the goal, they would have more conviction to achieve that goal, and so they will be working and collaborating with one another. Okay, ensure that the guidelines and procedure are clear, especially on how their performance is assessed. You share them the rubrics. Okay, how will they be assessed, and the procedure, the step-by-step process that they would do. And you must always be present at them. If it is being done inside the classroom, you have to be attentive to the concern and to the questions of your students, because if ever that they don't understand any guideline that you have given them, you have to provide them with the appropriate instruction. Okay, make clear that at the end of the activity they have to reflect together. So in collaborative activity, it does not end with the submission of the task or the output. Okay, but there must be reflection. So they have accomplished something. For example, they have done they made a mock up, for example. After making a mock up, then what reflection can they make? Yeah, probably they could uh, reflect that. At first, it may be hard, but